When I was about 9 or 10 years old, my childhood friends and I were outside playing in our quiet neighborhood. It was a typical sunny afternoon, and we were having fun. However, our innocent playtime took a disturbing turn when we noticed a man in a truck repeatedly driving by our street. Each time he passed by my friend's yard, he would slow down, his intentions becoming increasingly obvious. We soon realized that this man was recording us with one of those old handheld video cameras, and it sent shivers down our spines. Fear gripped us, and we decided it was time to take action. We sprinted inside my friend's house and urgently told his mother about the strange man. She didn't waste a second, and after reassuring her son, she turned to me. Even though my own mom wasn't home at that moment, my friend's mom insisted that I should leave. I tried explaining the situation and how I didn't have anyone at home, but she remained resolute in her decision. So with a heart pounding with fear, I had no choice but to embark on the journey home. Keep in mind, I lived about a mile or two down the road. As I sprinted home, I've never run so fast in my life. The terror of being pursued by a stranger was overwhelming, and I felt as if every corner I turned would reveal the man with the camera lurking. My imagination ran wild, and the distance felt like a marathon as I rushed back home to safety. When my mom learned about the incident, she was not pleased. She couldn't understand why my friend's mother had sent me away like that when I needed shelter. It was a day filled with fear and confusion, one I'll never forget. At the tender age of 4, my life took a tragic and heart-wrenching turn when I lost my father, stepmother, and baby brother in a catastrophic highway collision with a semi-truck. This fateful incident unfolded on the unforgiving stretches of Highway 84 in the vast deserts of West Texas, somewhere between Lubbock and Abilene. They had pulled over on that lonesome highway to attend to my baby brother, who was in the midst of a fit. Little did they know that their actions, driven by love and concern for their infant, would lead them to a grim encounter with destiny. The semi-truck driver, fatigued from being behind the wheel for too long, had veered onto the shoulder and plowed into their stationary vehicle at a devastating 70 miles per hour. Tragically, no one inside the family car survived the ensuing catastrophe, and a blaze ignited, consuming all that remained. At the age of 4, I was too young to have developed many memories of my father, especially considering my parents had split up prior to this incident. So, to this day, I carry no recollections of my own father. Nevertheless, as life would have it, I ended up attending Texas Tech University in Lubbock, a city eternally tied to the memory of that terrible accident. My routine drives between Lubbock and Dallas-Fort Worth took me past the very spot where the collision occurred. Curiosity and the desire to understand more about my own past and the accident that had claimed my family prompted me to delve into research, and what I found was a haunting tale that sent shivers down my spine. An individual had penned an article describing the moment they witnessed the accident and made that fateful call for help. They resided in a house along Highway 84, right where the tragic events had unfolded. In their account, they spoke of the young family involved in the accident, my family. But there was something eerie and disconcerting about their recollections. The witness stated that they observed my family, post-collision, walking along the side of the highway. This family, my family, appeared to be continuing their journey, one that would never lead them any closer to their intended destination, and it left me in a state of disquiet. These were not mere words on a page. They were a haunting reflection of my own family's unfulfilled journey. The road they never got to travel, the moments they were denied. Driven by the need to pay my respects and perhaps find some closure, I endeavored to locate the approximate spot of the accident. I turned to the locals, many of whom remembered the tragic incident from the late 90s. They pointed me in the right direction. When I reached that hallowed ground, I stood in silent reverence for a moment. It was an emotional pause to honor their memory, acknowledge their absence, and find solace. This story is one of the most poignant and profound chapters of my life, a reminder of the fragility of existence, the inexorable passage of time, and the strange and sometimes eerie connections that life weaves. While the memories of that day may forever elude me, the story lives on, etched in the heart and memory of a life irrevocably changed. And as I have learned, it serves as a testament to the importance of love, safety, and cherishing every fleeting moment with the ones we hold dear. My mom has been suffering from chronic back issues, causing her to endure constant pain. One evening, an intruder climbed through my bedroom window, and panic surged through me. In my mind, my mom's condition rendered her unable to assist, so I shouted for my dad, convinced he was our only hope. To my astonishment, my mom sprang into action, despite her usual physical limitations. With unwavering determination, she launched herself at the intruder, and a fierce struggle ensued. She landed blow after blow on the would-be invader. It was a testament to her inner strength. In the end, my dad rushed in to subdue the intruder properly. My mom, although victorious, had strained herself in the melee. Her heroic act required her to take additional painkillers, and she remained bedridden for almost a week afterward due to the intense pain it caused her. My mom's bravery and selflessness in that moment have etched an indelible mark in my memory. She is a true testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As I prepare to leave home soon, I can't help but feel a sense of sadness. In an attempt to ease her loneliness, I decided to gift her a companion, a lovely cat who now keeps her company during those challenging days. The bond they share is heartwarming, and it brings me immense joy to know that she isn't alone. When I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher, Mrs. Todd, was an oddly short and strange woman. She had a particular fondness for me, which as an 8-year-old I thought was fantastic. Mrs. Todd always seemed to call on me for fun activities first, showered me with compliments for the smallest achievements, and generally radiated positivity towards me. Back then, I genuinely believed she was my most favorite person in the world. I even remember excitedly telling my mother about how much I adored Mrs. Todd. One day, as I settled into my desk, I opened it to stow my school supplies and found myself in utter shock. There, resting in the pull-out drawer, was a Victoria's Secret magazine. The kid seated next to me noticed my astonishment, and we began to speculate about how it could have ended up there. Just as we started discussing this, Mrs. Todd approached and inquired, "What have you got there?" I was bewildered and explained that I had found it in my desk when I arrived at school that morning. To my astonishment, Mrs. Todd kept insisting that the kid sitting beside me must have been the one to put it there. She repeated this statement over and over, to both him and me, until, eventually, I admitted that he might have placed it there. A few days later, Mrs. Todd approached me after class to tell me about a special field trip I could attend if I continued to do well in her class. It was meant to be a weekend trip with just her and me to the Gulf of Mexico. I was over the moon with excitement at the time, but my joy was short-lived. Out of the blue, she was replaced by a new teacher who didn't show me the same level of affection. I was heartbroken by this sudden change. It took me many years to understand how deeply unsettling that situation was, and it still sends shivers down my spine when I think about it. When I was around 8 years old, a peculiar incident unfolded during our school recess. A group of kids had gathered around a storage room, frantically shouting warnings to stay away from the door because, as they put it, there was an eyeball staring back at you. My curiosity got the better of me. Their genuine fear piqued my interest, but I couldn't comprehend what they meant. Their faces were as pale as a sheet, and they desperately tried to discourage me from peeking through the keyhole. So I crouched down to get a closer look inside, and much to my surprise, there it was, an eyeball staring back at me. The sight was so unsettling that it sent shivers down my spine, and I was so terrified that I actually wet my pants right then and there. Later in the day, after all the commotion we kids had caused, I found myself in the nurse's office. It was only after some time that a janitor went to inspect the mysterious room. To our amazement, it turned out that someone had placed a mirror against that door, and the eyeball we had seen was nothing more than our own reflections. During my childhood, in our old apartment, my mom developed a friendship with our downstairs neighbor. They would often share coffee and tea, as our neighbor had been living a rather solitary existence. However, the day came when we noticed her conspicuous absence. Worried, both my mom and I decided to pay her a visit, a decision that would lead to a chilling and unforgettable experience. As we reached her door, it was as though we had stepped into a suspenseful movie. Our knocking caused the door to swing open slowly, revealing the dark and eerie interior. We ventured inside cautiously, and what we discovered still haunts my memories to this day. Our neighbor was lying in the bathtub, surrounded by an unsettling pool of blood, and the air was heavy with a putrid odor that clung to every corner of the room. We soon learned that the woman's girlfriend had recently left her, and the overwhelming heartache had proven too much for her to bear. My mom, in an attempt to console me and make sense of this grisly sight, offered a somewhat haunting reassurance, saying, "Don't worry, Mark. She was our friend, so she won't haunt us." Her words, while intended to provide comfort, left me with an unsettling mix of emotions that have stayed with me over the years. The experience served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human despair that can sometimes go unnoticed until it's too late. Several months had passed since I moved into my new home. On this particular day, I found myself with the luxury of a long weekend, and I decided to spend it tidying up the house and trying out some new recipes. As my culinary masterpiece simmered in the oven, I seized the opportunity for a quick, refreshing shower. Wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and steam, I was in the process of drying off when the familiar beep, 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 beep of my oven timer pierced the tranquil bathroom air. It was a signal that my delectable creation was ready to be rescued from the oven's warmth. In a hurry, I wrapped myself in a towel and, with hair dripping, ventured into the kitchen to retrieve my meal. With the aroma of a home-cooked dinner wafting through the air, I set to work on preparing some sides, still swathed in my makeshift towel attire. Once the sides were on the go, I made a beeline for the bathroom, intending to finish my post-shower routine and slip into something more suitable for a home-cooked dinner. However, when I returned to the kitchen, all culinary thoughts were immediately swept aside by an eerie and chilling sight. There, in sharp contrast against the pristine white tiles, was a small yet unmistakable blood splatter. Panic coursed through me. My mind raced, conjuring images of an intruder breaking into my sanctuary, inadvertently injuring themselves on the shattered glass of a window, and then lurking in the shadows, waiting for that perfect moment to pounce on me with sinister intentions. My heart pounded as fear tightened its grip. Instinctively, I abandoned any notion of confronting this possible intruder and left the house. My trembling hands dialed my then-boyfriend, explaining my fears that someone might be lurking within the shadows of my home. Unfortunately, he was at work and unable to come to my rescue. With an air of desperation, I turned to my neighbor, explaining the bizarre and horrifying situation that had unfolded. I implored her to come over, and she agreed without hesitation. Together, we armed ourselves with knives, bracing for whatever horrors might be awaiting us as we gingerly pushed open the doors to extra bedrooms and closets. To our immense relief, we discovered nothing out of the ordinary, no unwelcome intruder lurking in the shadows. Nonetheless, the basement remained, an abyss of darkness and echoes. Dread filled me as I pictured a potential assailant biding their time down there. My fears had me on the brink of panic, for my basement was a vast, foreboding expanse, ripe for hiding malevolent intentions. Summoning all our courage, we descended into the dim abyss, boxes and the occasional lurking spider our only companions. No trace of an intruder was to be found. As time passed, my trepidation waned, and my neighbor departed, reassured that my home was secure. I began cleaning the enigmatic bloodstain that had triggered this terrifying episode, yet my mind remained haunted. My fear had stemmed from a real source, The blood on my floor was undeniably real, but the question loomed large. How did it get there? Was a sinister presence lurking close to my home? My mind raced through a series of chilling scenarios. Hours passed, the unsettling mystery etching itself into my consciousness. I couldn't shake the feeling of disquiet. And then, a sudden realization struck me like a thunderbolt. As I used the bathroom, I spotted the undeniable truth. I had started my period, a perfectly natural occurrence. The veil of fear was lifted, and I felt an overwhelming sense of embarrassment and shame as I connected the dots. That inconspicuous drop of blood on the floor wasn't some malevolent force. It was merely my own biology. My day had taken a terrifying and bewildering turn, all because of an innocent mishap with a drop of blood. I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief and amusement at how the mind can conjure the darkest of scenarios from the simplest of accidents.